Aspettiamo noi e colpisce la prossima. Vuoi andare loro?
So I was working with, people that were getting big surgeries and stuff like that. And then at the start of COVID, I started working the COVID ward. So everyone that came up to the ward were obviously very, very sick, and they got sick very, very quickly. So for me, that was a bit of a shock. I was newly kind of qualified. I started working there, and I just, I was shocked at the way that people would come in. They wouldn't be too sick, and then about 2 or 3 days later, they would have died. So like at the start, it was kind of, you could kind of cope with it. You could kind of say, okay, COVID won't go on for too much longer. These people maybe, they're, quite old, or they have, loads of illnesses. So maybe that's why they're, dying. So I was trying to kind of rationalize it in my head, being like, it's, it's just older people or stuff like that. But then as the months went on, you could see that it kind of obviously affected like a lot of younger people as well, which for me, I found that so devastating. As well, because of COVID, like you couldn't have visitors in, you couldn't have family members in. So a lot of patients, the only people they had by their side was the nurses or, healthcare assistants beside them while they died. And I was holding hands with people that I never met in my life, that I never knew, while they were dying and while they were like taking their final breaths, which is obviously devastating, which is really, really tough. And then, going home after that, for me, it was just shocking. It kind of took a good while to kind of come to terms with it and to kind of work through all the emotions of it. Because, these strangers that you wouldn't know, you were like with them for kind of like their final journey. But like I was working there for a year, like over a year. And then there was I remember there was one particular patient, and in the morning she was fine. She was, able to take her medication. Because usually in the mornings we'd go in, we'd obviously have to wear the full PPE, gloves, goggles, everything like that. So I feel like, with nursing, you can generally kind of get to know a person and they kind of can recognize you and you can kind of build a relationship like that. But I think during COVID, you couldn't have that kind of like therapeutic relationship kind of because you were in the PPE. There was kind of like a physical barrier between you and the patient. But anyway, there was this one particular lady. She was, I think, in her 80s. She was elderly enough, and in the morning time, she was fine. She was sitting up, having her breakfast. Like I said, I gave her medication and stuff like that. And then, throughout the day, she kind of struggled to breathe. She was very, very ill. And then all of a sudden, she basically was dying, like right in front of me. So I remember she was in like a 6-bedded kind of bay with other patients. So we kind of moved her to a single room just so she could have a bit of privacy. And I remember when she was being wheeled out, she looked at me and she asked me and she said, "Am I going to die?" So I remember I was like, oh my God, like what do I say to this woman? And I just like completely froze because I had never experienced that before. And I didn't really know what to say. So the only thing I could think of, and the only thing I thought wouldn't kind of have her really panicked or anything, I just said, we're making you more comfortable. We want to make you more comfortable. And as I said that, I think she knew because she had tears in her eyes. And then as well, which one of the most difficult things I found as well was having to contact the family members and to tell them that their loved one was either dying and they had to come in to see them, or that they had died, because so many patients, you'd leave the room for a few minutes and you'd go back and they could have died. So yeah, I just remember, because as obviously a healthcare worker, you have to kind of be shown to have a bit more, to be a bit more together and stuff like that with your emotions, and kind of be a bit of comfort for the family. So I remember the family came up and yeah, they were so upset, understandably, of course. But I remember just behind my PPE, like tears like falling behind the goggles and stuff like that, as I was with this patient and with their family. So, and also because you couldn't even hold your family member's hand without a pair of gloves or anything like that, which was really really devastating. So I think for me, like after those really tough days at work, I'd have to go home and I'd really have to like reflect on it. For me, like during COVID and stuff like that, I kind of had to, go for walks and kind of meditate and stuff like that to kind of help, because otherwise I think you just get completely burnt out, having to deal with, such high like death tolls at work and stuff like that. So yeah, that was not easy at all.
Usciamo con lui, non parliamo di no. Questa larga e chiudi le mani nella larga e chiudi le mani guarda.
The gowns you had to wear like the head gear, you had to wear goggles, the big masks, the gloves, and you could be in with a patient for 2 or 3 hours at a time. When they were unable to breathe, when you were washing them or whatever. So what I think back is just being in a patient's room with them for 3 hours, like 2-3 hours on end, and it feel like just claustrophobic, feeling so claustrophobic.